3 hours after we should have been in the air, I was still at gate 23. My phone was at 2%. My hands shook so badly I could barely hold it. The airport roared, wheels scraping tile, voices echoing through intercoms, families rushing past. But inside me, only silence. That's how it began. We weren't delayed, we weren't lost. We were left. David sat beside me, his hand steady in mine. Just ahead of us, hours earlier, had been Matt, our son, and Jess, his wife. It was supposed to be our dream trip, one we'd planned for years. I had curled my hair that morning, picked the blue blouse David loved, tried one more time to look like someone Jess might finally acknowledge. She never did. She never has. At the terminal, Jess didn't say good morning. She walked fast, lips tight, phone in hand. Matt pointed us toward the seats by the big windows. "Mom, Dad, wait here. Jess and I will check us all in. We'll come back." Her eyes flicked up just long enough for that tiny fake smile. "It'll be quicker this way." That word. Quicker. Quicker without us. We waited. 15 minutes. 30. Nothing. Final boarding flashed across the screen. Flight 718, gate 23. Then my phone buzzed. "Matt, we decided to go alone. It'll be easier this way. Sorry, didn't want to make a scene." I read it again and again. We decided. In those words, my son belonged more to her than to us. My chest went hollow. I handed the phone to David. His eyes stayed calm, but I knew that silence, deep pain, pressed flat. Around us, travelers hugged, laughed, called names. For us, time collapsed. I thought of the money we gave them for their house, the babysitting weekends, the wedding dress I sewed, the meals, the laundry, the down payments, all those years of trying, folding myself smaller, hoping Jess would see me, hoping Matt would remember. And still, it'll be easier this way. The cab ride home was wordless. The house was cold, lined with smiling photos that suddenly felt like strangers. David sat at the kitchen table, the one that had seen birthdays, bills, prayers. His voice was flat. "They don't want us anymore." And in that moment, something inside me shifted. Not heartbreak. Clarity. If they could leave us at gate 23 with nothing but silence, I could leave something too. Not with tears, not with pleading, with ink. Because the next thing I reached for wasn't my phone. It was a pen. It was a pen. Blue ink. Cold between my fingers. I sat at the kitchen table, the same table that had seen birthdays, Sunday pancakes, school permission slips, and bills stacked high. Tonight it carried only papers, deeds, bank statements, and our will. David sat across from me. His face was calm but heavy, as if words themselves had become too expensive to spend. "They don't want us anymore," he had said earlier in that same calm tone. Not cruel, not loud, just true. I uncapped the pen. The click echoed. I laid the deed to the cottage flat in front of me. That house by the lake had been promised to Matt. We had even written a transition plan years ago. I had imagined him carrying it forward, bringing the grandkids there for summers. But I remembered gate 23. He hadn't even looked back. My hand didn't shake as I drew a line through his name. Blue ink slashed across the page. It felt both violent and honest. David exhaled slowly. He didn't tell me to stop. He didn't ask if I was certain. His silence agreed. We carried the folder downstairs and opened the lockbox. Inside were envelopes, notes, receipts, evidence of everything we had given. I lifted one slip of paper. $20,000, the down payment for their house. Jess had smiled that day and said, "We'll pay you back when Matt gets his bonus." The bonus came and went. Twice. The money never came back. We never asked again. My hand trembled as I set the paper back inside. We closed the box and locked it. The click felt final. Later, I pulled down another box from the closet. This one held pieces of memory I had kept to reassure myself we still mattered. A drawing from Ethan, red crayon hearts, and the words, "I love you, Grandma." A birthday card from Jess with only her name inside. A photo torn from a trip to Yellowstone. I carried the box outside to the fire pit. David followed, quiet. I lit a match and dropped it in. The edges curled black. Jess's neat signature twisted into smoke. Ethan's drawing turned to gray dust. I watched until it was gone. David stood behind me. Neither of us cried. It wasn't grief. It was release. That night, I slept without waking. No worrying about Christmas invitations. No wondering how Jess felt about my cooking. For the first time in years, I didn't dream of pleasing anyone. But the ache returned in daylight. The house cut me with reminders. The walls lined with photographs. Matt as a boy missing teeth, his wedding, the grandkids. Once those frames had warmed me. Now they felt like eyes watching. A photo slipped from behind a fridge magnet. It was from Thanksgiving. Jess had posted it online. Everyone was smiling. Everyone except me, because I wasn't in it. I had been in the kitchen carving turkey while Jess arranged the kids and told them to smile for the real family photo. I carried the photo to David. He looked at it once and handed it back. "You didn't eat dinner that night," he said. He was right. I remembered telling Jess I was tired. She handed me a dish towel and said, "It happens at your age." I had laughed politely, the way I always did. Now that laugh felt like a betrayal of myself. More memories sharpened. The flowers I brought after her second pregnancy, left behind the sink. The blanket I sewed, forgotten in their car. The casserole dismissed as fine. And the moment Jess corrected Ethan when he called me Grandma. "It's Alice, remember? Just Alice." The boy repeated it, eager to please. Just Alice. I stayed quiet. Silence had become my only defense. One afternoon, I drove without telling David. I ended up in a strip mall. Across the parking lot stood a small law office. I walked in. The receptionist asked gently, "What brings you in?" "I need to make changes," I said. "Protections, independence." She introduced me to Hannah, a lawyer with steady eyes. She told me to take my time. So I did. I told her everything, our accounts, our property, the will, and the words from Gate 23 that still burned. We decided to go alone. "It'll be easier this way." Hannah listened. Then she asked one question no one had asked me before. "Do you feel safe with your son having access to your estate?" The truth rose like a tide. "No." The word closed something inside me. It wasn't anger. It was clarity. We began paperwork at once. Hannah called it revocation and restructuring. I called it survival. "Back home," I told David. He didn't blink. He took my hand and said, "We should have done this years ago." We sat again at the kitchen table. We changed passwords. We moved funds. We rewrote the terms of the cottage. Every click of the keyboard felt like peeling old guilt from my skin. But healing didn't come neat. It came jagged. 3 nights later, the phone rang. Matt's number lit the screen. I let it ring into voicemail. His voice was flat. "Hey, Mom. Hope you're well. Just wanted to let you know we're back. Let's talk soon." No mention of the airport. No apology. No explanation. Minutes later, a text. "Did you guys change the safe code? Jess says she couldn't get in." The words blurred. Jess had tried the safe. She hadn't asked. She had tried as if what was ours was hers by default. I set the phone down. My chest tightened, but not with fear. With recognition. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was entitlement. It was ownership. For years I would have replied, softened it, apologized. Not now. I let the silence answer for me. The phone stayed face down on the kitchen table, its screen dimming to black. My chest rose and fell, steady, almost too steady. For years, I had been quick to reply, quick to soothe, quick to soften. That instinct was gone. Or maybe it had burned away with the box of old cards and drawings in the fire pit. David moved beside me. He picked up the phone, glanced at the screen, then set it down without unlocking it. His voice was low, even. "They'll push harder." He was right. Silence was not the end. It was the beginning. The next days came like heavy air. Each corner of the house whispered reminders of what had been taken for granted. I found myself standing in the hallway, staring at the photographs. Matt, in a Little League uniform, his socks too big. Matt on prom night, Matt at his wedding, Jess holding his hand, her smile tight but triumphant. I stood there until my eyes burned. I walked into the kitchen and saw the mark in the table where Matt had once carved his name with a pocket knife. At the time, I had scolded him, but secretly, I'd loved it. A piece of him etched into wood. Now it looked like a scar I had been pretending wasn't there. David came in carrying the folder of legal documents. He laid it on the table, and for a moment, we just looked at it. It wasn't just paper anymore. It was our shield. "We need to finish what we started," he said. We spent the afternoon sorting bank accounts, insurance policies, retirement funds, passwords scribbled on slips of paper. We changed them, one by one. I pressed each new code into the keyboard and felt the strange relief of closing doors that had been left wide open for too long. When the work was done, we sat back. The kitchen felt different, not lighter, but more solid, as if the floor had thickened beneath our feet. That night, I dreamed not of airports or gates, but of doors shutting quietly, one after another. Not slamming, not breaking, just shutting, neat and final. The silence didn't last. 3 days later, the phone rang again. Matt's number. I let it go to voicemail. His message was almost casual. "Hey, Mom, just checking in. Hope everything's good. Let's talk soon." His voice was light, as if nothing had happened, as if Gate 23 was only a misplaced memory. Then came the text. "Jess says she couldn't get into the safe. Did you change the code?" I stared at the words. The phrasing told me everything. Not, "Could we talk about it?" Not, "Is everything all right?" Just the assumption that access had been denied to something that should have belonged to them. I didn't reply. The knock came a day later. Sharp. 3 raps that echoed through the hallway. David looked up from the newspaper. I stood frozen. Jess walked in first. She still had the old key. Her heels struck the wood floor in clipped rhythm. She carried herself the way she always did, like she owned the room before she entered it. "Alice," she said, her voice clipped, polite. "Did something happen to the safe code?" "Yes," I answered. She blinked, surprised at the brevity. "We weren't told. You weren't supposed to be." Matt followed her in, slower, his face clouded. He looked from me to David, searching for ground. "Mom, can we talk?" David appeared behind me, silent and steady. "Of course," I said. "Let's talk." We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where we had once cut birthday cakes, packed school lunches, wrapped Christmas gifts. This time, the air was sharp. I laid the folder on the table. "We changed the documents. You're no longer on the accounts or the deed." Matt's eyes widened. Jess's chin lifted, her back straightening. "That seems extreme," she said. "More extreme than leaving us at an airport?" I asked. Silence stretched, thick as tar. "You could have talked to us," Matt said quietly. "We didn't mean to hurt you." I nodded slowly. "You didn't mean to include us either." I slid a photo across the table. Thanksgiving. The one they posted without me. "Do you remember this?" Matt looked down. Jess crossed her arms. "We didn't want drama," she said. "We thought it would be easier." There it was again. That word. Easier. "You made us invisible," I said. Matt whispered. "Mom, it wasn't like that." "It was exactly like that." I stood. My voice was even. "You will not guilt us. You will not access our accounts. And you will not walk into this house like you own it." Jess's lips tightened. "You're tearing this family apart." I looked at her. "No, we're saving what's left." David rose and walked them to the door. He closed it gently, not with force. The click of the lock was quieter than a sigh. The house went silent, not empty, clean. That night, I opened the window in our bedroom. Fresh air moved through the curtains. I didn't feel victorious. I felt steady. For the first time, the fog had lifted. I knew exactly what I would no longer allow. But they didn't go quietly. The next morning, Jess called. She skipped greetings. "Alice, I just got off the phone with the bank. Why would they say my name isn't on the account anymore?" "Because it isn't," I said calmly. "You can't just do that," she snapped. "We had an understanding." "No," I answered. You had expectations. We had silence. She hung up. Minutes later, a text from Matt. Mom, what is going on? Jess is furious. You blindsided us. This isn't how family acts. I almost laughed. This isn't how family acts. Neither was abandoning us at gate 23. The storm built. Messages came from his sister, from Jess's mother, even from a friend I hadn't spoken to in years. Each one carried the same refrain. Jess is heartbroken. You're being unfair. David and I sat at the kitchen table, watching the notifications roll in. Finally, he pressed a button and deleted the family group chat. The silence after was sharp but clean. Jess posted online. Sometimes the people who claim to love you are the first to betray you. Comments poured in. Stay strong. Toxic in-laws are the worst. People who knew nothing decided everything. In her version, we were villains. I should have expected it. Jess never fought with shouts, she fought with stories, and she knew how to make hers sound good. Days passed, each one carrying the weight of new messages, new accusations, but something had shifted inside me. I didn't feel frantic anymore. I didn't feel desperate to explain. I let the phone buzz and rest on the counter. I spent mornings walking through the garden, pulling weeds with bare hands, feeling dirt under my nails. I made coffee and sat by the window, letting sunlight warm my face. Ordinary things felt like shields. At night, David and I went through more documents. We rewrote our will. We signed new forms. Each signature was a brick in the wall of peace we were building. One evening, he looked at me across the table. His eyes were tired, but clear. We're not victims anymore, he said. I nodded. For years, I had believed giving more would make them see me, but all it did was teach them how to take. The silence between us wasn't heavy anymore. It was strong. And then came the letter. It arrived in the mail, written in Jess's tidy script. She had always liked control. The letter was polite, but the tightness showed through. We never imagined you would take it this far. You're still their grandparents. This isn't fair to the kids. I read it aloud to David. Each word dripped with resentment, not sorrow. It wasn't about loss. It was about losing control. I folded the letter, slid it into a drawer with the others. Then I lit a candle. Not for them. For us. For the life we were reclaiming. That night, David and I talked about Paris. About somewhere beautiful, somewhere loud, somewhere we could be seen. The idea felt like oxygen. I didn't know it yet, but choosing joy would be its own kind of rebellion. The idea of Paris sat between us like a spark. We hadn't booked anything yet. We hadn't even looked at flights. But just saying the word had shifted the air. Paris. It was more than a city. It was proof that life could stretch beyond our front door, beyond gate 23, beyond the boundaries Jess had drawn around us. But they didn't let us reach for it without a fight. The calls came first. Jess again. Her voice carried that clipped tone that made every sentence feel rehearsed. Alice, I just spoke with the bank. Why would they say my name isn't on the account anymore? Because it isn't, I answered. You can't just do that, she snapped. We had an understanding. No, I said. You had expectations. We had silence. She hung up. Minutes later, Matt's text came through. Mom, what is going on? Jess is furious. You blindsided us. This isn't how family acts. I stared at the words. I almost laughed. Family? Family had left us at gate 23. The group chat exploded. His sister, Jess's mother, even a friend of hers I hadn't heard from in years. All chimed in. I read messages dripping with judgment. Jess is heartbroken. You're being unfair. Parents shouldn't punish their children like this. David pressed a button and deleted the chat. The silence afterward was cleaner than any defense we could have typed. Then Jess posted online. Sometimes the people who claim to love you are the first to betray you. The comments came like a flood. Stay strong. Toxic in-laws are the worst. People who didn't know us decided who we were. For the first time since the airport, I felt small again. It wasn't just their rejection now. It was public. Our story rewritten for strangers. I sat at the kitchen table, phone in hand, watching the words multiply. I could feel my throat close. I wanted to shout, to tell the truth, to explain how many meals I had cooked, how many babysitting weekends I had given, how many dollars we had poured into their lives. But no one online wanted the whole story. They wanted the one Jess had already told. David put a hand over mine. Let it go. But letting go isn't easy when your name is being carved into a lie. They didn't stop with posts. A week later, Jess showed up unannounced. Her car screeched against the curb. She rang the bell 3 times, sharp, demanding. I opened the door just a crack. You made a mistake, she said. No greeting, no hesitation. This is not how this family works. I stepped into the doorway, blocking her view. Actually, this is exactly how it works now. She laughed, a sharp, condescending sound. You're letting bitterness guide you. Do you want to die alone? The words landed heavy. That was Jess's weapon. Fear. Fear of being cut off. Fear of being unlovable. I felt it press against me, old and familiar. For years, it had worked. But not this time. I'd rather be alone with peace, I said, than surrounded by manipulation. Her lips tightened. She turned and left. The door shut behind her, but the echo stayed. Matt came the next day. He didn't knock. He stood on the lawn and called my phone. When I answered, his voice was low, almost shaking. You froze the accounts. You changed the locks. You made us look like strangers. The words hurt because part of me still wanted to believe he saw us as his parents, not obstacles. But his voice didn't carry regret. It carried anger. I let the silence sit until he spoke again. We thought it would be easier. You're retired. You didn't need all that money. There it was, the justification. The belief that what was ours could be theirs. That love meant endless access. That parents were supply, not people. I didn't reply. The silence was my only defense. 2 days later, an email arrived. Subject line, Final Appeal. Jess had written it, polished and long. She spoke of family legacy, of values, of children who deserved better. She framed it as love. But every sentence carried the same demand. Control. Don't deprive them of what they deserve, she wrote. That phrase broke me in a different way. Deserve. As if everything we had built, earned, and given was not ours, but theirs by right. I typed one line back. They deserve honesty, and that starts with recognizing who left whom. We blocked her email after that, but the damage was already done. I could feel it in my chest. The strength I had felt after the fire pit, after the lawyer's office, after crossing out Matt's name, it faltered under the weight of their campaign. I began to question myself. Was I cruel? Was I punishing them? I stood in the hallway staring at the photographs. My reflection caught in the glass. For the first time, I wasn't sure who I was seeing. The breaking point came on a Saturday. Matt drove up again. He didn't come inside. He shouted from the lawn. You're ruining everything! People are asking questions! You think this makes you look strong? David stepped onto the porch. His voice was calm. We are not responsible for your choices. We are responsible for our peace. Matt's face twisted. He looked like a boy caught, not a man owning his decisions. He left without another word. I closed the window, but the echo of his voice clung to the house. For hours, I wandered room to room, restless. My heart pounded like I had run a mile. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The fear Jess had thrown at me, "Do you want to die alone?" repeated like a drumbeat. The online comments, the texts, the lawn shouting, all of it piled high. For the first time since Gate 23, I wondered if we had lost. Not just them, ourselves. I got up, padded into the kitchen, and sat at the table. The clock ticked. The house was quiet. Too quiet. I rested my head in my hands. Tears came slow, hot. I had thought the hardest part was the betrayal. It wasn't. It was the unraveling afterward, the weight of being painted as the villain, the ache of knowing our own son was comfortable with that picture. David came in, sat across from me, and didn't say a word. His presence steadied me, but the ache remained. This was the low point. Not the airport, not the fire pit. This. The moment I feared we had given away not just our money, our time, our love, but also our name, our story. I thought about calling Matt, about asking him why, about begging him to see me. I even picked up the phone. My thumb hovered over his name. Then I remembered the message at gate 23. We decided to go alone. It'll be easier this way. And I set the phone back down. The tears slowed, my breathing steadied. But I knew this wasn't over. The fight had only shifted. This wasn't over. I felt it in my bones the night Matt shouted from the lawn. His words still clung to the curtains, still echoed in the hallway. You're ruining everything. People are asking questions. For hours, the house seemed smaller, as if his voice had pushed against the walls themselves. But morning came, and with it a decision. I was done explaining, done defending, done shrinking. When the phone buzzed again, another text from Matt, another half-demand disguised as concern. I didn't even look. I slid the phone across the table toward David. He pressed the button that silenced it. The world could howl, but our house would not. They didn't stop. Jess called again. Alice, she said, her voice taut. The bank says we're not listed anymore. Why would you do this? Because it's ours, I said calmly. You can't just cut us out. No, I said. We chose peace. She exhaled sharply, like she'd bitten into something sour. You're making a mistake. Then she added the weapon she always used when cornered. Think about the children. I almost laughed. For years, I had thought about the children. I had babysat entire weekends. I had sewn dresses and packed lunches and slipped cash into Matt's hand when bills came due. I had thought of nothing but the children. Now I thought of myself. She hung up. Minutes later, another message from Matt. Jess is furious. You blindsided us. This isn't how family acts. Family. That word used to anchor me. Now it felt like a chain. The campaign against us spread. Messages from extended relatives, even acquaintances I hadn't spoken to in years. All repeating the same lines Jess had fed them. It's really sad. They need you. Don't you want to see the kids grow up? David read a few, then pressed delete. His calm steadiness was a shield I leaned against. We don't owe them our silence anymore, he said. He was right. The doorbell rang 1 week later. Jess again. She stood on the porch, her heels too close to the welcome mat, as if claiming the space. You've taken this too far, she said the moment I opened the door. This isn't how family works. Actually, I said, this is how it works now. Her laugh was sharp. You're bitter. Do you want to die alone? The words were meant to wound. They had worked before. Not now. I'd rather be alone with peace than surrounded by manipulation. Her face hardened. She turned, heels clicking as she stormed off. The next day, Matt stood outside, his voice low but edged. You froze the accounts, changed the locks. You made us look like strangers. I didn't answer. He went on, his words heavier, as if rehearsed. We thought it would be easier. You're retired. You didn't need all that money. The truth landed like a knife. That was what it had been about all along. Not family, not love, money, access, expectation. I set the phone down. Silence spoke for me. Then came the email. Subject line, final appeal. Jess's words flowed in neat paragraphs. She spoke of legacy, of values, of the children's needs. Every sentence dripped with polish. Every line bent toward the same demand, control. We ask you to reconsider, not for us, but for the children. Don't deprive them of what they deserve. That phrase burned. What they deserve. I typed back one sentence. They deserve honesty, and that starts with recognizing who left whom. We blocked her email after that. The storm didn't end. It intensified. Family group chats exploded again. Posts online multiplied. In their version, we were the villains, heartless parents who had betrayed their own blood. For a night, I almost believed it. I sat at the kitchen table staring at my hands, wondering if we had gone too far. Then David placed the folder in front of me. Receipts, bank slips, loan records, proof. You gave, he said. We both did. They took, and then they left. I opened the envelope that held Ethan's crayon drawing. The one that once said, I love you, Grandma. I remembered Jess correcting him. It's Alice. Just Alice. That was the truth. That was the erasure. I closed the envelope and breathed. No more. They didn't listen. Jess showed up again, sharper than before. You made a mistake, she said. Undo it. Behind her, Matt stood, looking less like a sun and more like a shadow. I didn't move from the doorway. We've already chosen. Her voice rose. You're tearing this family apart. I met her eyes. No, we're saving what's left. David closed the door behind them. The house was quiet, not heavy, clean. Days later, another text from Matt. You think this makes you look strong? It doesn't. People are asking questions. I read it once, then deleted it. That night, David and I sat across from each other at the kitchen table. For once, there was no folder of documents, no stack of receipts, just 2 cups of coffee cooling between us. We should go, he said. Go? Paris. Somewhere beautiful. Somewhere loud. Somewhere we can be seen. The word lifted like a balloon. Paris. For months, we had been shrinking. Now we would expand. We booked the trip. We bought new luggage. We took new passport photos, smiling like people who finally remembered how. We shopped for clothes, laughed in the aisles like teenagers. I posted a picture of our bags lined up by the door. Caption, time to see the world. Finally. The comments poured in. Friends, neighbors, even a coworker I hadn't spoken to in years. You've always deserved this. We didn't post the flight number. We didn't share the hotel. But we posted pictures in Paris, dining under the Eiffel Tower, dancing by the Seine, sipping coffee in a cafe where the cream was real. For once, the photos told the truth. Matt saw. He texted, I hope this makes you feel better. I didn't reply, because it wasn't about feeling better. It was about living. In Paris, the world opened wide. The nights glowed. The mornings stretched. For the first time since Gate 23, I didn't think about who had left me behind. I thought about where I was going. I held David's hand as we walked across a bridge, the city lights rippling on the water below. We're still here, I whispered. He squeezed my hand. Yes, we are. The trip ended, but something inside me didn't. I had thought leaving them behind would end me. Instead, it began me. Back home, the silence felt different. Not sad, not heavy, clean. I made coffee. Sunlight streamed through the window, warming my face. David scrolled through photos on his phone and held one up. A picture of us laughing at a cafe in Montmartre. That's who we really are, he said. I smiled. Not polite, not practiced, real. The phone buzzed. An email, no subject line, just 2 lines. I hope you enjoyed your trip. We really need to talk. Please don't shut me out. For a moment, my stomach twisted. Old guilt rose like a reflex, but then I saw it clearly. Not a plea for understanding, another attempt to pull me back. I closed the email. Days later, a letter arrived. Jess's handwriting. We never imagined you'd take it this far. You're still their grandparents. This isn't fair to the kids. Her resentment seeped through every sentence. It wasn't about loss. It was about losing control. I folded the letter and placed it in the drawer with the others. Then I lit a candle. Not for them. For us. For the life we had reclaimed. But just as I felt the peace settle, Matt tried one last time. He stood on the lawn again, shouting, You're ruining everything! You think this makes you look strong? David stepped onto the porch, his voice steady. We are not responsible for your choices. We are responsible for our peace. The words hung in the air like a gavel. I stood behind him, watching our son's face shift between anger and disbelief. And for the first time, I didn't feel broken by it. I felt clear. David's words hung in the air like a bell. We are not responsible for your choices. We are responsible for our peace. Matt's face twisted. He stood on the lawn, shifting from one foot to the other, his anger collapsing into disbelief. For years, I would have rushed out to him, arms open, words spilling. desperate to soothe. But that part of me had burned away in the fire pit with the old drawings and letters. I stood in the doorway, steady. My silence wasn't emptiness, it was strength. Matt turned, got in his car, and drove off. Gravel crunched under his tires. The echo faded down the street. For a long time, the house stayed still. Then David closed the door. It was over. Not in the sense that wounds vanish. Not in the sense that families magically mend. It was over in the sense that we had chosen an ending to one story, so another could begin. The days that followed were quieter. I woke early, made coffee, and let sunlight pour through the window without flinching. David read the paper. Sometimes we spoke, sometimes we didn't. Silence no longer felt like punishment. It felt like rest. I started journaling again. Small lines at first. Lists of things that made me breathe easier. Sunlight on the table, the sound of sparrows in the yard, the weight of a warm mug in my hands. Slowly, the lists grew into paragraphs, into pages. My own handwriting reminded me of something I had forgotten, that my story could be written without their approval. We began hosting dinners again. Not for Matt and Jess, but for friends, neighbors, people who had known us long before the word toxic was hurled across social media. We laughed around our table, the same table that had once felt like a battlefield. This time, it felt like what it had been meant for. Gathering, warmth, food passed hand to hand without strings attached. The cottage by the lake became ours again in spirit, not just in law. David and I drove there one weekend. The water shimmered under the afternoon sun. The porch swing creaked in the breeze. I sat there with a blanket over my lap, remembering summers past. But instead of grief, I felt steadiness. The cottage was no longer a promise to someone who had walked away. It was a place for us. The letters didn't stop entirely. Jess sent another, her script neat, her words heavy with accusation. "You're still their grandparents. This isn't fair to the kids." I read it, folded it, and placed it in the drawer with the others. Then I lit another candle. Each flame felt like reclaiming air. I realized something then. Her anger wasn't about love. It was about losing control. Matt texted one last time. Just one line. "We miss you." I stared at the words. Once, they would have shattered me. Once, I would have run. But now I saw them for what they were. Not an apology, not recognition, but another attempt to tug me back into the old role of giver, fixer, quiet background figure. I powered off the phone. Not from hate, from peace. Life didn't turn into a fairy tale. There were days I still ached. Days I looked at photos and felt that twist in my chest. But those moments passed quicker now. They didn't chain me. At the library one afternoon, a woman about my age approached. She hesitated, then said, "You're Alice, right? I saw your photos from Paris. I just wanted to say thank you. You reminded me that it's never too late." Her voice shook. "I'm still learning how to say no, to stop giving until there's nothing left." I touched her hand. "It's hard at first, but it gets easier. The silence you hear after you set a boundary, that's not loneliness. That's peace." Her eyes filled. She smiled, a small, trembling smile. "Thank you." A week later, I received a message on Facebook from a distant cousin's daughter. "I don't know all the details, but I wanted you to know what you did inspired me. I finally left a situation I thought I had to endure. Thank you. You reminded me that you don't have to deserve love. Rejection can also be a way of loving yourself." The screen blurred as my eyes filled. It hit me then. This was never about punishment or revenge. It was about remembering who I was before I began shrinking to make others feel tall. One evening, David and I sat on the porch. The air smelled of cut grass. Fireflies blinked in the distance. He leaned back, eyes closed, a small smile on his face. "This is what peace feels like," he said. I nodded. "And it's ours." We didn't need Paris photos to prove it. We didn't need public approval. The proof was in the quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't erase you, but holds you. Sometimes I think of Gate 23. I remember the buzz of the airport, the scrape of luggage wheels, the final boarding sign flashing. I remember my phone buzzing with those words. We decided to go alone. It'll be easier this way. For a long time, those words crushed me. Now they set me free. Because they were right, in their way. It was easier this way. Easier to see the truth. Easier to stop pretending. Easier to step into the life waiting on the other side of their absence. That was my choice. I chose peace, even if it meant walking away from family. But sometimes, late at night, I still wonder, did I do the right thing? If you were in my place, would you have done the same? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if you'd like to share more moments like this together, you can subscribe. It means we keep walking through these stories side by side.